It's March 24th, 2012, and we're here with Major Robert Hewitt, U.S. Army Air Force or U.S. Air Force retired.
Yes.
And we're here to talk about your experiences during World War II and some of your experiences before and some after. Could you tell me, how long have you lived in Hillsdale?
I moved in about 1977.
1970, okay, it's quite a
So
while.
I'm an old veteran here.
Yeah. Where were you born and what year were you born in?
I was born in 1919 on a summer vacation my mother had up in the Connecticut shore in Milford, Connecticut. But I was brought up in Manhattan.
So you're a New Yorker.
I'm a New Yorker, really.
New Yorker. Okay. And so did you grow up living in Manhattan?
Yes, I did,
Okay.
except for when I went to school and so on.
Okay. And then where did you go to school?
I went to Andover, class of 36 for 1 year. After I'd been to a city high school,
Yes.
a special high school, which did 4 years work in 3 years. So I went to Andover because my brother had pushed through and graduated at 19, and he didn't want me to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for my father for a year, went to Andover for a year, and finally went to Dartmouth and graduated in 1940.
Now, Andover's a preparatory school. It's one of the
yes,
elite schools. Right?
it's boarding away from home, and it was they had college level classes,
Mm-hmm.
so it made college a real breeze for me.
Yes. Yeah. And what did you major in at Dartmouth?
Oh, easy stuff. American drama, English literature, and stuff like that.
Not girls or anything like that.
They'd be intelligent for the rest of my life.
So after you graduated from Dartmouth in 1939, did you say?
1940.
1940.
And I had an immediate job with Lord and Taylor department store in Manhattan
Okay.
on the executive training squad.
Mm-hmm.
There were about 5 or 6 of us. And I got moved around in the store, and when I was finally summoned, I was manager of the street floor, 13 departments and a couple of hundred people, age about 23.
Wow. And this is what you were doing at the outbreak of the war in December
Yeah,
of 41.
I got pulled right out of the department store. My number came up, and April 8th, 1942.
April 8th. And you were drafted into the
I was
Army.
drafted, yeah.
Where did you take your basic training then?
After they inducted me at Governor's Island, and I was at Fort Dix till I was assigned. Then I was assigned back to Governor's Island to the Ordnance Department headquarters. I was a clerk.
Mm-hmm.
And then they shipped me to Columbia, South Carolina, to an ordnance headquarters. And I was one of about 3 or 4 clerks. And I was fortunate in having officers who respected my background.
Sure.
They happened to be Ivy League.
Okay. Like you. Were they the ones that encouraged you to go to OCS or recommended you to OCS?
They didn't have to encourage me. I wanted to get up. I wanted to make me money.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have been moved up from corporal to sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to go to the ordnance thing, but I said, no, I want to go to the Air Force.
Okay.
So I was interviewed and was assigned to what was the 3rd class of the Air Force Administrative OCS at Miami Beach.
Okay.
It was a 3-month course.
Mm-hmm.
It was sheer hell.
Those are the what they call the 90-day wonder. Is that what was a 3-month
90-day
OCS?
wonder, exactly what it was.
Uh-huh. And where was it held in Miami?
Vacated hotels mostly.
So you lived in a hotel in Miami Beach for OCS.
Yeah,
That's pretty tough duty, isn't it?
it was really tough.
You were commissioned as 2nd lieutenant October 28th, 1942.
That's right.
And that was out of Miami Beach.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I was on orders with a whole bunch of guys to be shipped to Salt Lake City, but I beat the train that was carrying the bodies, and I went out by myself, and I got there one of the first ones to arrive, and so I got a break. They sent me into town to the Air Force headquarters 18th Replacement Wing, and they needed an assistant adjutant, and I got the job before the rest of the guys arrived.
So there's a benefit to getting there first. That's great. So as the adjutant, what did you do for that group?
The wing itself was out of the air base. We were in headquarters in the town, and we were in charge of everything that the air base did. And what did the air base do? It shipped personnel to all newly formed B-17 and B-24 bomb groups.
Okay.
And enlisted and commissioned.
So you would create a crew, and you would select from all the people out in the military and create
We
crews?
had a room as wide as this wall, with all the organizations on the wall, and with all the positions indicated in the field, like a big stock exchange.
It's like trading stock. You had told me, I think you said you handled the technical enlisted people. That was your area, or was that later?
I started there, and then what they decided to do, they moved the whole operation as part of the headquarters 2nd Air Force in Colorado Springs. And that's where I became chief of the enlisted assignments section for the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
So taking it a step further, I got involved with the 509th Composite Group in Wendover Field, Utah. And I didn't know who the hell they were until a guy named Colonel Tibbetts showed up with his whole staff and said, I have authority from Hap Arnold to have you order in anybody I want from around the country with specific technical requirements. And there was no kidding. He said, I want them immediately, and don't take any no's from their headquarters. Get them going. So I said, yes, sir. And he kept in touch, and his staff kept in touch. They'd visit me, or they'd phone me.
Now, Hap Arnold was the chief of staff of the Army Air Corps at that time?
Yeah.
Okay. And Paul Tibbetts ended up being quite famous because why don't you tell who he was?
There was a thing called silver plate, and that was the code name for all these special people who we called in. And all I knew was that it had to be some sort of a miracle weapon. We never knew the nature of the weapon. All we knew that it was important. They took some of my own fellow officers and assigned it to the group. They wanted me to come, but my general wanted me to stay where I was, and I didn't object because I was actually limited service because of my eyesight, but I had faked it in order to get commissioned. So that was always in reserve.
You were made first lieutenant in June of '43.
I'm pretty sure that's it, yeah.
And
After about 6 months.
And then captain 6 months later, which is pretty fast, in January of '44.
Yeah. And I occupied a TO, table of organization position for lieutenant colonel.
Okay.
I was doing the job of lieutenant colonel. And me and another fellow, we worked under the director of personnel. I was an assistant to the director. We were in charge of forming the B-29 groups by bringing back the B-17 and B-24 group personnel and assigning them to the new groups as needed. It was a big, big enterprise.
Did they have to go through training when you brought them back from B-17s and B-24s to the B-29?
No, they had their specialties.
Okay.
They'd been in there were some new people assigned, but they had the cream of the crop.
Were these flight crews as well as ground personnel, or were they both?
Well, my associate handled the commissioned personnel, and I handled the ground personnel.
Okay. And so that was in Colorado Springs when you were doing the B-29s?
I was there for about a year and a half.
Uh-huh. And that was where that's where you interfaced with Colonel Tibbets, who
Yeah.
flew the Enola
I don't
Gay.
want to over-exaggerate it. He was the authority, and he was very impressive and very serious.
Yeah,
But it isn't as if I did the whole thing single-handedly. I was part of the enterprise.
sure. Yeah. That's, were you on orders to go overseas at some point in time?
Absolutely. General Rush, who was one of the European bomb commanders, came back, and he was assigned a desk in our office as he started to put this new group together, new wing together. And he said to me and this other fellow, Puffer, "Have you been overseas yet?" And we said no. He said, "Well, I'd like you to come with us." And I said, "Yes, I guess." And so, back around July, we were transferred over to Sioux City, and I was an adjutant of that outfit, and we gradually put together all the officers and enlisted personnel for the wing headquarters. And we were on orders to go to Okinawa. I was part of the ground echelon to sail from Tacoma, and the rest were going to fly over. And suddenly the word came through, the bomb has been dropped. What bomb? An atom bomb. And the news came through, Colonel Tibbets. I said, "Oh my God." We were the ones.
You've been involved.
And so orders came through from Washington to have a standby, and they didn't think they needed us. So we cooled our heels and fooled around and went on leave and came back. And the general said, "I'm taking over Sioux City Air Base. I want you to come with me." And I said, "Well, I've just had a physical exam, and I've been declared limited service, kind of my eyesight, and I'm on orders to go to an Army retiring board for a dismissal from the Air Force."
This was in later 1945, say August, September?
This is September and October.
Okay.
Summing it up, it was a very amazing experience for me. As a Manhattan boy, a New England school guy, I'd never been anywhere in the country. So World War II opened it up. And while I was at Salt Lake and Colorado Springs, I was on various trips to the air bases, meeting the personnel people and so on. So it broadened my horizons beautifully. And I cherish it as one of the most important memories of my life.
How did you get around back then, Bob? Was it train mostly across the country when you would go back and forth from?
Planes.
Or you would fly?
I mean, we had our own B-17s. We were shipped here and there. I mean, I don't think I was ever on a train, except to go home.
You were in Sioux City when you were finally let out, and then you stayed in the reserves through 1953, is that correct?
No, I was sent to Scottsfield, Illinois,
Okay.
and went through the proceedings there. And that was the termination point.
Yeah.
And that was a train ride.
You, I think you mentioned to me that I asked you where you lived at the various bases. Could you elaborate a little bit about the living conditions you had and meals and all while you were in Utah or Colorado Springs? Or?
It was a terrible hardship. I lived in the Hotel Utah, right across from the Mormon Tabernacle, and we had a headquarters squadron downtown, and I ate there now and then and went to a retreat there. But basically, I had a beautiful social life. There were at least 20 civilian women employed by me in the headquarters, and I had a WAC detachment. And it was a really terrible experience.
Yeah. Would you mind just hold up the picture of yourself and we can see what these young ladies have to tolerate as a boss?
I'm ashamed to say what time has wrought. This was probably done in 1942 sometimes. As I was 23, I guess around that time.
Uh-huh.
And when I look at this thing, I say, oh gosh, time has given me the wrinkles.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think how difficult service would have been for a young man looking like that as an officer with a lot of women around. It was probably very, very grueling service.
Well, I ended up with a relationship with our chief telephone operator, and everybody was Mormon, and I moved in Mormon circles for a year and a half. They drank surreptitiously, and I got very much infatuated with this dame and myself, and she wanted to get married, but in view of my impending departure, I discouraged the idea.
Bob, if you could hold up the medals too at this point, those are the two
Well,
medals that you
the
received.
routine, that were the routine medals for good conduct in World War II service.
Mm-hmm.
I never got shot at. I wasn't in combat.
Okay.
But so be it.
Yep.
And then, of course, I was assigned to a reserve outfit, which met down on Wall Street monthly for lectures and meetings. It was a big bore, mostly New York Times types of discussions and so on. And I stuck it out, and they wanted me to go to summer camp and so on, and I resisted it. So after a couple of years, I went before a board for promotion to lieutenant colonel, and they said, Hewitt, you're finished. You didn't fulfill the requirements, and you're being dismissed.
Now this
And that was a regret of mine, because if I'd qualified, I would have been financially rewarded. And the other fellow who'd been with me in Colorado Springs, he ended up as a colonel and happily retired out in Minnesota.
Wow, yeah.
But